The explosion hit like thunder. It lifted Staff Sergeant Ellie Young off her feet and threw her straight into a wall. For a moment, the world went silent. Only a sharp ringing filled her ears. Dust, smoke, screams, chaos. Through the haze, Ellie saw him, Commander James Hammer Harrison, trying to stand, blood pouring from his thigh, still firing his M4 rifle. Rounds cracked through the air as Taliban fighters flooded through the broken wall, and then she heard someone scream, "Medic! We need a medic!" Ellie blinked. They were calling her. She was the medic, and half her squad was already down. The enemy had set a perfect trap. They were surrounded, outnumbered, and losing fast. Harrison was bleeding out, minutes away from death. What happened next would make her a legend, a combat medic who would go far beyond her duty and change how the world saw battlefield medicine forever. But right now she wasn't thinking about medals. She was thinking about keeping her commander alive and somehow saving everyone else. Just 6 hours earlier, everything felt routine. Charlie Company, 2nd Battalion, 12 soldiers on a simple mission. Find a Taliban weapons cache in the Korangal Valley. The soldiers called it the Valley of Death. The plan was simple. Go in before dawn, clear the compound, get out fast. Intel said maybe 3 or 4 enemy fighters. Just another day in Afghanistan. Ellie had done this dozens of times. At 28, she'd seen more blood than most doctors ever would. 6 years in uniform. 5 combat tours. Iraq, Afghanistan. Names that still haunted her dreams. But Commander Harrison, he was different. A leader who fought with his soldiers, not above them. He knew their families, their birthdays, their fears. He led from the front, always the first in, the last out. The kind of leader soldiers would follow anywhere. Even into hell. They moved out at 0400, darkness all around. Boots silent. Weapons ready. The compound looked empty. Too empty. Too quiet, whispered Specialist Marcus Rocket Rodriguez. Ellie tightened her grip on her pistol. Commander Harrison's voice came through the radio, calm but sharp. "Eagle Eye, this is Hammer 1. You got eyes on the target?" "Negative movement," came the reply from Overwatch. "Maybe 2 or 3 heat signatures inside." Maybe. That word would cost lives. The Taliban had learned to hide from thermal cameras, with thick blankets, tunnels, anything to mask their heat. But the clock was ticking. If they waited until daylight, civilians would flood the valley and the Taliban could vanish. So Harrison made the call. "We go in fast. We go in hard, breaching in 3, 2, 1, boom." The gate exploded open. Rodriguez went in first, then Harrison, then the rest. Ellie followed, pistol in one hand, medical pack on her back, and then all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from every window and doorway. It wasn't 3 enemies. It was 30. They had walked straight into an ambush. Bullets tore through the air. RPGs screamed overhead. Private Danny Thompson, just 19, took a round to the neck and fell, blood gushing. "Man down," someone yelled. Before the words even echoed, Ellie was already there. She dropped beside Danny, hands working fast. Gauze, pressure, morphine. "Stay with me, Danny, you're okay." "I've got you." Her voice was calm even as the world burned around her. Commander Harrison shouted orders. "Lewis, suppress that window. Rodriguez, grenade that door." Ellie's hands didn't stop. She sealed the wound, dragged Danny behind a wall and marked him for medevac. Then another explosion ripped through the air. The Taliban had breached the outer wall. They were everywhere. "Fall back. Fall back to the main building." Harrison's voice boomed. Ellie grabbed Danny's vest, dragging his limp body toward cover. Bullets kicked up dirt inches from her head. Her muscles screamed. Her breath came ragged, and yet she didn't stop. Inside the building, chaos ruled. Wounded soldiers everywhere, screams, blood, smoke. The radio crackled. No air support. Weather too rough. 2 hours delay, 2 hours. They wouldn't last 20 minutes. But Ellie kept moving. Tourniquets, chest seals, morphine. Her world shrank to the wounded in front of her. Her hands were steady, automatic, trained, unstoppable. And then the floor erupted. A hidden IED, buried deep under the building. The explosion blew the roof apart. Walls collapsed. Soldiers screamed. When Ellie came to, her ears rang, her vision blurred. She pushed herself up, coughing in the dust. And then she saw him, Commander Harrison, down. His leg twisted, blood pouring fast. His femoral artery was severed. He had minutes to live. Ellie crawled to him, ripping open her last tourniquet. "Stay with me, sir," she whispered, tightening it until the bleeding slowed. But she could see it. Internal wounds, punctured lung. He was fading. Around them, gunfire drew closer. They were surrounded. Half the squad was gone, and Ellie, she was the only one left standing between life and death. Commander Harrison's blood soaked through the floor. He was barely conscious, still gripping his rifle, still trying to aim. Even as he bled out, "Sir, you need to stay still," Ellie shouted, her hands moving fast, gauze pressure tourniquet. But he wasn't listening. "The squad," he gasped, eyes flickering. "Keep fighting," his voice broke, and Ellie felt her chest tighten. He wasn't just her commander. He was the man who had taught her what courage looked like. And now he was dying, and right in front of her. She pressed the tourniquet tighter. "Not today," she whispered. "You're not dying today, sir." But deep down she knew his pulse was fading fast. Outside, the gunfire roared louder. The Taliban were pushing in. They smelled victory. And the Americans were almost out of ammo. Ellie turned to the others, bloodied, exhausted, broken. "Mitchell, Kowalski, can you still fight?" "Barely," Mitchell coughed, blood running down her face. "Then hold the north wall. Chen, get that radio working. Anyone who can still shoot, pick a window and make every bullet count." Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. For a second, the fear in everyone's eyes turned to focus. They followed her orders, because in that moment, she was the only one still standing strong. Ellie looked back at Harrison. He was fading fast. His M4 rifle lay beside him, still loaded. He tried to raise it, but his arm trembled. "Take my rifle," he whispered. "The squad needs you." "Sir, I'm a medic," she said. "I save lives." "I don't." "You're a soldier first," Harrison interrupted, forcing strength into his dying voice. "And right now, they need a leader. Be that leader, Young." His words hit harder than any explosion. The medic had to become the soldier. Bullets tore through the walls. The enemy was inside the compound now, close, too close. Ellie's eyes darted to the doorway. She could hear their boots crunching on the dirt outside. They were seconds away. She made her choice. She grabbed Harrison's M4, checked the magazine, half full, tucked his spare mags into her vest. The rifle felt heavy in her hands. Different. Cold. This wasn't the tool she was trained to use. Her weapon was medicine. Not bullets, but now. Saving lives meant something else. She looked down at Harrison. "I'll be back for you, sir." He managed a weak smile. "I know you will." Then his voice hardened one last time. "Now go, that's an order." Ellie burst out of the storage room. The main hall was a nightmare. Rodriguez was down, maybe dead. Mitchell was firing from a window, emptying her last magazine. Chen was still on the radio, voice hoarse from screaming. Only 5 soldiers could still fight. The rest were wounded. Or worse, Mitchell, ammo count. Ellie yelled. "Last mag." Through the window she saw them. Dozens of Taliban fighters pushing forward through the smoke, shouting in victory. They were preparing for a final assault. This was it. Either fight or die. And then Ellie's training kicked in. Not her combat training, but her medical one. Doctors are trained to see patterns, to diagnose, to think fast. And that's what she did. She looked at the enemy's movement. They were bunching up at the 2 openings in the wall. She smiled grimly. "Fatal funnels," she muttered. "Chen," she shouted. "You still got grenades." 2 frags, 1 smoke. "Good. Mitchell, Lewis, cover left breach. Everyone else, watch the right. Chen, on my mark. Throw those grenades." She took aim through the cracked window. Her breathing slowed. In through the nose, out halfway. She squeezed the trigger. Crack. 1 enemy down. Another leaned out. Crack. He fell. The rifle kicked against her shoulder, but she didn't flinch. Every shot was clean, precise, frag out. Chen yelled. The explosion lit up the compound. Bodies flew, screams echoed. Ellie kept firing, reload, aim, fire. She was a medic no more. She was a soldier. "Reloading," Mitchell shouted. "Covering!" Ellie replied instantly, shifting her fire. Their teamwork, instinctive, perfect. Even in the chaos, it felt like a rhythm. But ammo was running low. Their magazines were almost empty. And the enemy just kept coming. Ellie scanned the battlefield through her scope. Then she remembered the weapons cache they'd come for in the first place. "Chen," she yelled. "The weapons!" Where exactly? Building across the courtyard, northeast corner. She looked through the smoke. 50 meters of open ground. Suicide unless... Pop smoke between us and that building, she ordered. Mitchell Lewis, suppressing fire on my signal. Ellie, what are you... I'm going for the cash, she said. That's insane. So is dying here. On my mark, she shouted. Mark! Purple smoke exploded across the courtyard. The others opened fire. Ellie sprinted. Bullets sliced through the air. One tore through her medical pack. Another hit the dirt inches from her boots. She didn't stop. The smoke hid her shape, but not enough. Rocks exploded around her. Her lungs burned. 50 meters felt like 500. She slammed into the door of the target building and burst inside. Heart pounding. Hands shaking, and what she saw made her freeze. Crates of weapons, RPGs, AK-47s, boxes of C4. The Taliban had enough firepower here to level an entire base. She had just found Hell's armory. She worked fast, grabbing ammunition, RPGs, magazines. Then her eyes fell on the C4, and an idea hit her. She set 2 charges, rigging a quick timer. 3 minutes, enough to get back, enough to turn the enemy's weapons against them. She stuffed every pocket with ammo and sprinted back toward her team. The smoke was fading now. A fighter appeared, AK raised. Ellie fired from the hip. 1 shot down, another came. 3-round burst. Down again. She didn't even think anymore. Her body just moved. By the time she reached her squad, her uniform was torn, her face streaked with dirt, her chest heaving. She threw the magazines on the floor. Grab everything you can, she yelled. We're leaving in 2 minutes. Leaving where? Mitchell asked, reloading. There's a trench 20 meters north. Better cover than here. Move the wounded first. Ellie ran back into the storage room. Harrison was still alive, barely. His face pale, lips cracked, but his eyes followed her. Heard shooting, he whispered weakly. Had to borrow your rifle, sir, she said, forcing a grin. Hope you don't mind. Even through the pain, he smirked. That's my girl. She grabbed him under the arms and began dragging him again, inch by inch, through dust, blood, and rubble. And then the C4 detonated. A massive explosion shook the ground. The weapons cache went up in flames, a fireball 100 feet tall. The shockwave flattened everything. The Taliban froze. They hadn't expected that. The blast disoriented them, long enough for Ellie's squad to move. Move! Move, go! She screamed. They stumbled into the shallow depression, dirt, mud, and cover. Barely 3 feet deep, but it was enough. Ellie dropped beside Harrison, checking his wounds again. He was fading. Fast. That was impressive, he whispered. Save your strength, sir, she said. But as she looked out at the battlefield, she knew, and it wasn't over. Not yet. The enemy was regrouping. The final storm was coming, and this medic-turned-warrior wasn't done fighting. The world was still shaking from the explosion. Dust rained down like ash. The air burned with smoke and fire, but Ellie didn't stop. Not even for a second. She crouched beside Commander Harrison, pale, weak, breathing shallow. His pulse, barely there. His leg, tourniqueted tight, was soaked through with blood. He tried to speak, but all that came out was a whisper. Ellie, finish the mission. She gripped his hand. I will, but you stay with me, sir. You hear me? He nodded weakly. But she knew. It was a fight he might not win. All around them, the wounded moaned in pain. Mitchell, Lewis, Chen, Kowalski barely holding on. Their ammo was low, their hope even lower. Then Chen shouted, voice cracking through static, I've got comms. Predator drones on frequency. A spark of hope. Patch them in! Ellie yelled. Charlie Company, this is Eagle Eye, her voice crackled through the radio. We see you. You've got 40 enemy fighters closing in from 3 directions. 40. Ellie's heart sank. They had 5 soldiers who could still fight. 6 wounded. No ammo left to waste. Recommend immediate extraction, the drone operator said. Negative, Ellie replied instantly. We can't move the wounded. Request close air support. Fast movers are 30 minutes out, came the response. Can you hold? Ellie stared at her battered squad. 30 minutes. 40 enemies. It was impossible. But she remembered something Harrison had told her months ago during training. When the math doesn't work, change the equation. She grabbed the radio from Chen. Eagle Eye, can that drone mark enemy positions? Affirmative. Good, we're calling in artillery. Danger close. Copy that, Sergeant. Wait, confirm? You're in the blast zone. Confirmed. Send it anyway. For a moment there was silence. Then understood. Firebase lightning on standby. Ellie looked at her squad, their faces smeared with dirt and fear. Everyone down. When I say take cover, I mean cover. She gave the coordinates using the drone's feed. Precise, perfect, deadly. Rounds out. 40 seconds to impact. Take cover, she screamed. Ellie threw herself on top of Harrison, shielding him with her own body. The earth shook like it was tearing apart. Thunder roared across the valley. The artillery shells hit like the wrath of God. Each explosion lit up the night, shock waves ripping through the ground. The air turned to fire and dust. Ellie's chest felt crushed. Her ears rang. Her lungs screamed for air. But she didn't move. When the last explosion faded, all that was left was silence. She lifted her head, eyes wide. The enemy positions were gone, flattened. Through the smoke, bodies lay scattered. The Taliban force shattered. But some were still moving. Still crawling. Still fighting. Adjust fire, Ellie yelled. Drop 50, left 10. More rounds thundered down. Precision, destruction, finality. And then it was over. The surviving Taliban broke and ran, and terrified, disoriented, defeated. They had come to crush an American squad. Instead, they'd been obliterated by one medic who refused to die. Cease fire. Cease fire, Ellie shouted into the radio. Enemy retreating. Silence followed, broken only by the wind. Then faintly the sound she'd been praying for. Helicopter blades. Charlie Company, this is Dust-Off 3-1, came a new voice. We're 5 minutes out. Pop smoke for visual. Ellie grabbed a green smoke grenade and pulled the pin. Thick clouds of color swirled into the sky. Her voice cracked as she called out, You hear that, boys? We're going home. The medevac birds came in fast. Rotors chopping the air, door gunners scanning the horizon. They landed hot, their medics jumping out, running toward the wounded. Who's in command here? One of them shouted. Chen pointed straight at Ellie, covered in blood, her armor dented. Harrison's M4 still slung across her chest. That'd be Sergeant Young. The flight medic froze for a second. You're the one who called in that artillery. Ellie nodded. Someone had to. She helped lift Harrison onto a stretcher. He looked up at her, barely conscious. Ellie, he whispered. She leaned close. Yeah, sir? Thank you. She smiled, tears streaking her dusty face. Just doing my job, sir. Harrison's lips curved into the faintest smile. No, you did everyone's job. As the Black Hawks lifted off, Ellie finally let herself breathe. The adrenaline drained from her body all at once. Her hands trembled. Her knees buckled. She had been running, fighting, bleeding for over an hour. And now that it was done, she could barely stand. Mitchell walked up beside her, offering a canteen. That was... She paused, lost for words. I don't even know what that was. Ellie took a slow sip, her eyes scanning the battlefield. The compound was destroyed. Bodies, mostly Taliban, lay scattered. Smoke rose in black plumes. It didn't look like victory. It looked like the end of the world. I'm a medic, Ellie whispered quietly. I'm supposed to save lives. Mitchell looked at her, voice soft. Oh, you did save lives, Ellie. All of ours. Minutes later, reinforcements arrived from Firebase Lightning, a full platoon. They expected a firefight. Instead, they found devastation. And one bloodied medic still standing. A young lieutenant stepped out, eyes wide. Who's the on-scene commander? Sergeant Young, Chen said, pointing to Ellie. She took command after Harrison went down. The lieutenant stared, stunned. A medic did all this? Mitchell corrected him. A soldier did this, who happens to be a medic. As the helicopters carried the wounded home and the reinforcements secured the ruins, Ellie sat in silence, hands shaking, eyes fixed on the smoke. For the first time since the ambush began, she allowed herself to feel it, the fear, the grief, the pain. She had done things no medic ever imagined doing. She had crossed the line between healer and warrior. And she had survived. That night, under a blood-red Afghan sky, Ellie Young made peace with the truth. Sometimes. Saving lives means being willing to take them. 3 months later, the sound of helicopter blades was replaced by camera shutters. No gunfire, no smoke. Just applause echoing through the White House East Room. Ellie Young stood tall, dress uniform crisp, medals glinting in the light. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from memories, The president began reading the citation. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity, at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. Every word felt distant. Her mind drifted back, to the valley, to the screams, to the smell of dust and gunpowder, to Harrison bleeding out on the floor, to Thompson's pale face, to the moment she picked up that rifle. In the front row sat her squad, what was left of it. Harrison, now walking with a cane, Thompson alive but medically discharged, Rodriguez scarred but grinning like always. Mitchell holding back tears. When the president placed the Medal of Honor around her neck, Ellie didn't feel pride. She felt weight, the weight of every life saved, and every one she couldn't. She saluted, then glanced at Harrison. Their eyes met. After the ceremony, he walked over, and slow, careful, but determined. "I never properly thanked you," he said. "You already did, sir," Ellie smiled softly. "In the helicopter." He shook his head. "No, I mean it. You didn't just save my life. You saved all our lives. You became the leader we needed, when we needed it most." Ellie looked down, her voice quiet. "I just did what you would have done, sir." Harrison smiled. That same calm, steady smile she remembered from the battlefield. "No, Young, you did what had to be done. That's what makes you exceptional." Later that evening at the reception, a grizzled general approached her. "Sergeant Young," he said, "what you did has started quite a conversation at the top." "Conversation, sir?" He nodded. "About what medics can do. About when saving lives means picking up a rifle. Some say it breaks the rules, medical neutrality and all that." Ellie looked him straight in the eye. "And what do you say, sir?" The general smiled. "I say, you do whatever it takes to bring your people home. You proved that a medic can be a warrior when needed, without forgetting their purpose. The months that followed changed everything. The Army rewrote its combat medic training. More weapons training, more tactical drills, more authority for medics to take command when chaos hit. And Ellie? She was asked to help design the new program, to teach the next generation of healers how to fight, and the next generation of warriors how to heal. 6 months later, a small package arrived at her quarters. Inside was a folded letter. It was from Private Danny Thompson's mother. It read, "My son is alive because of you. Not just because you treated his wounds, but because you made sure there was a helicopter waiting to bring him home. Thank you for being both a healer and a warrior when my boy needed both." Ellie read it once, then again, and she cried out, not tears of sorrow but of peace. That letter meant more than any medal ever could. She folded it carefully and kept it in her pocket. For the rest of her deployment it stayed there, a constant reminder of why she fought. Years passed. Afghanistan faded into memory, but Ellie Young's story did not. Now a command sergeant major, she stood before a room full of new recruits at Fort Sam Houston. Rows of young, nervous faces, all wearing the same uniform she once wore. She spoke softly, but every word carried power. "You are healers first, always, but never forget, you are also soldiers." The room was silent. Every eye locked on her. "There may come a day," she continued, "when you'll have to choose between treating a wound or stopping another one from happening. When that day comes, remember, your mission isn't just to heal, it's to preserve life, by any means necessary." She rolled up her sleeves, showing the scars on her hands, not from bullets but from hundreds of IVs, bandages, and tourniquets. Then she held up a small silver badge on her chest, her marksmanship badge. "This," she said quietly, "I earned the day I learned that sometimes the best medicine is firepower." The class stood frozen, speechless, and Ellie smiled, because she knew her story wasn't just hers anymore. It was theirs too. From that day forward, every combat medic would train to lead, to fight, to heal. The world had changed because one woman refused to choose between saving and fighting. In the mountains of Afghanistan, Staff Sergeant Ellie Young had dragged her commander through hell. She'd picked up his weapon and finished the mission. In doing so, she didn't just save her squad. She redefined what it meant to be a medic and what it meant to be a soldier. For generations, soldiers would hear her name whispered in training halls, not just as a hero, but as the medic who stood between death and her brothers in arms, with a bandage in one hand and an M4 in the other. And when her students asked her what kept her going that day, she would always answer the same way, calm, steady, and sure, because that's what combat medics do. They stand between death and the people they love, armed with bandages and bullets, fighting death itself. And sometimes they win. She was a healer, a warrior, a leader. And on that day in the Valley of Death, she proved that courage doesn't wear rank, it wears heart.